Let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. It broke box office records opening day. The film has the second largest weekend for a film right after Avengers Endgame, and the biggest superhero in the world has another movie out. Has Disney finally cracked the code with the most popular superhero in the world, or is this simply another cash grab as the MCU struggles to get back on its feet and find some semblance of impact akin to the impact that Marvel had prior to and leading up to Endgame? Let's talk about the characters in this movie, what Disney finally got right about Spider-Man, and the stumbles that show that Marvel continues to make the same mistakes over and over again. Hi, I'm Andrew. I am a film director who has directed a feature film and multiple short films. I love movies, and I'm here to help you find movies that you will love and learn more about the film industry. There will be some heavy spoilers ahead, so if you've not seen the film, feel free to click away, or if you don't care, continue watching. Spider-Man Brand New Day follows Spider-Man as he is struggling to be Spider-Man in a world that no longer knows who he is, no longer recognizes him, and he no longer has friends who can be there for him or any family who can be there for him. He is completely alone, and we are seeing a Spider-Man who is dealing with the effects of that, the effects of loneliness and the pressure that pushes on him. He is 100% invested in the job. He doesn't know what to do, and he can only work all the time. And the film opens with a montage from ending after No Way Home finished all the way up to 4 years later approximately, because we are seeing Ned and MJ graduating from college. And so Spider-Man has been cleaning up the city. He is working with this chief of police, and we see him struggle with this for several years. Things go awry. There is a force who is trying to infiltrate the Department of Damage Control, which is a department of the government that was created for this film, and Spider-Man begins to track down who this person is, try and figure out who they are, and how he can capture them. Now, it is revealed that that is Jean Grey, and after he captures her, he realizes that the person who is in charge of the Department of Damage Control was lying to him, and Spider-Man decides to go and rescue her. And we get the climax of the film, and at the end, Jean Grey escapes, and we are quickly setting ourselves up for Doomsday here. So how was the film? I think right off the bat, I enjoyed it. I had a really good time in the theaters. It was a really fun theatrical experience, sitting and watching with friends, sitting and watching it with strangers. The theater was pretty packed, and it was really nice. The visuals I thought looked really good. Some of the cinematography was pretty incredible. They had some incredible slow motion shots and some awesome sequences that I think really worked well for this film. The marketing, I think, really did a huge service for this movie, because it was only the first 15 to 20 minutes, barring a couple shots, that were used in the marketing of this movie, which was very deceptive, and I liked, because I thought we were getting a large portion of the movie spoiled, but in reality, we were just seeing the first couple minutes of the film, so that was really cool. The film, at the time of this recording, has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes with the critics, a 98% with the fans. The film has an 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb, which currently puts it in the top 250 on IMDb, and a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. People are rating this movie incredibly highly, and I think it's pretty worth it. There's a lot of stuff that works really well in this film. Some things that stood out to me that really worked well about this movie are that we're finally seeing a Spider-Man that has to rely on his own talents and his own wits to get by. He doesn't have that cushion, that soft landing that Iron Man or Iron Man's tech provided him in previous movies. So it was really cool to see kind of a Spider-Man that has to be on his own, that is trying to survive in New York as a young man who is of college age. That, I think, worked really well. We finally got a true villain for Spider-Man in the form of Scorpion. I will talk more about that later, but I thought that the scenes that we got with Scorpion were really good and really interesting. I kind of wish we had gotten a little more with him. The suit being practical and like something that Tom was actually wearing looked so good. It felt so real in this movie, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And the practical stunts were incredible. Like some of these action sequences and some of the fights I thought were just brilliantly done. The cinematography, especially for some of the different action sequences, there's one shot in particular where Spider-Man is running away from the Hulk who's chasing after him, and it's just spinning in this hallway, pulling away from him. So well done. The visual effects there, the camera work, the stunts, all of it came together to make just an incredible action set piece that I really, really love. When we encounter Jean Grey and we see her jumping from person to person as she's like going through their minds, they do this practical effect of like you seeing her almost like jump from person to person, and I think that they sold that really well. I was imagining how difficult it must have been to coordinate all of the extras doing that on the day, and that is a huge feat, and massive props to the filmmakers because I think that was just so good. I really like how they stuck to MJ and Ned not knowing who Peter was, and they were consistent with that throughout the whole movie. It's hinted at the end that potentially Ned is starting to remember him, MJ is starting to remember him. There's already kind of theories circulating as to why that is, and I liked that. I liked that a lot. I'm glad that the consequences from the previous movie held through this movie, and we're seeing how Peter has to respond to that, and he's not responding to it well. And it's nice to see the films building one on top of the other. I'm very happy that they only undercut one serious moment with comedy. The rest of the film, I thought they handled a lot of the serious moments really well. And the actors did a really good job. I was very proud of Tom Holland, Zendaya, Sadie Sink, and John Bernthal. I thought all of them did a really great job, and it was cool to see them in these roles, especially seeing Tom and Zendaya and John Bernthal. Just having seen them in The Odyssey a couple weeks ago, it was really great to see them play an entirely different set of characters and how well they all did in both of those movies, I think. I think that both Tom and Zendaya have come really far from the first Spider-Man movies to here. It was cool to see how much they've grown and improved as actors. However, I have been a outspoken critic of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. I'm not a huge fan of them, and that is for a variety of reasons. So this movie needed to do a lot to impress me, and I have to say, it did. A lot of this movie impressed me a lot. But I think that a lot of this movie is very paper thin, and the moment you start thinking about it, it just falls apart. My biggest critique of this movie is Jean Grey, mainly stemming from the question of why is she in this movie? And I understand why she's in this movie because we need to set up Doomsday, but there doesn't feel like a reason for her to be versing Spider-Man in this movie and to be a Spider-Man villain. I think that she's fine as a misunderstood villain for Spider-Man and for this movie because he kind of they do a good job of like letting the two of them relate to one another in the climax, but it feels like this movie only had her in it so that we could set her up for Doomsday. It didn't feel like there was a really good reason for her to have been here. I really wish that this film would have just been a Spider-Man movie. We have not gotten that at all with the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. They are either nostalgia bait like No Way Home was, or they have bigger things that they have to set up like Homecoming and Far From Home did. And I just want a Spider-Man movie, man. I just want a movie that is Spider-Man dealing with things in New York as Spider-Man and the day-to-day issues that he has to go through. And we don't get that with this. Once again, there are so many things that we have to start setting up, so many things we have to figure out that how it's going to play into the MCU and Marvel going forward, that I think it bogs this film down a lot. I have a huge issue with Jean Grey's character because we're never shown her being good or worthy of redemption for the entire movie until the third act. And that really bothered me, mainly because when it is finally revealed and like Spider-Man, Peter Parker figures out that the director of the Department of Damage Control was lying to him and he decides to go save Jean Grey. It was a conflicting moment for me because thinking back on it, I was thinking, this director lied to him and told him that Sarah was the name of a person that he knew, and that's why Jean Grey said that name when she was captured. And I understand that, like, the guy lying to him is not a cool thing at all. But Jean Grey has had absolutely no regard for human life in the movie up until here. She is driving a tank, careening down the streets. She is endangering multiple civilians. She's endangering people who are working at the Department of Damage Control. Like, she is actively like hurting people, but Peter just decides to go save her because the guy lied to him. So thinking about it later, it really bothered me because it does not seem like it was a decision that made sense for the character to make. And there was no moment apart from the flashback to Jean's sister being taken that gave us any reason to root for Jean Grey. Like, she never has a moment that she helps someone or she is kind to someone. She is strictly hurting people, invading their minds, and doing terrible things to people. So that made no sense to me. I felt like we were supposed to care about her because we know who Jean Grey is. She's a good guy. She's one of the X-Men. Not because this version of her is good and worthy of saving. I think that it's almost like it was a complete opposite swing of what happened with Brave New World, where in Brave New World, they put Red Hulk on the posters and all of the marketing, and that would have been a really cool reveal to find out about in the middle of the movie, like what they did with Jean Grey here. And in contrast, it felt like they wanted this reveal that, oh my gosh, Jean Grey's in this movie, and there's this mysterious person in the background, but we all figured it out. I think it would have been so much better for the character and for the sake of the story if we had learned Jean Grey's backstory way earlier in the movie so that we could understand and relate to her a bit, because they wanted this huge reveal of, oh, the director of the Department of Damage Control is a bad guy, actually, and he had this girl killed. And it's like, that's awful. And I understand why they wanted to do it, but it didn't make sense to me why Spider-Man would choose to go and save her when she's really just been a horrible person. She's been worse than Scorpion, and he was actively trying to get Scorpion back. I think that Jean Grey was well written, and I think Sadie Sink did a great job of playing. I just don't love how the character was used in this movie and how the portrayal went. It really bothered me the more that I thought about it. The second issue I had with this movie, going back to I just wanted a Spider-Man movie, is that this feels like the second movie in a trilogy. This felt very similar to Spider-Man 2 in kind of we're seeing Spider-Man who is on a roll and he is dealing with all of these things over and over again, and he's struggling with the idea of being Spider-Man and he's alone. But unlike Spider-Man 2, we don't have Spider-Man 1 to fall back on. We don't have Spider-Man 1 to see all of these characters and get to know them so that then we can see how it is eating at Peter and how it is how Peter is reacting to it now that he is in this situation that he is in. I'm specifically thinking of the police commissioner, the Punisher. These two characters, I think Peter interacted with them in such a comprehensive way that I would have liked to have seen how he got to know them, because we've never seen them before in relation to Spider-Man, and I think it would have been really interesting to see how he met them, see the dynamic, and then let the dynamic grow and change over the course of this movie. But that's not something we got. A third big issue that I had with this movie that they obviously could not amend and could not change because Doomsday is going to be coming out later this year is the editing of this film. When they had the action sequence where they captured Jean Grey and put her away, And then they reveal that MJ does not know Spider-Man. She doesn't love him. She doesn't have any memories associated with him. But when Spider-Man takes her to the apartment, she invites him up and they have this beautiful moment between her and Ned and Peter. I was so ready for the movie to end right there. It was like a bittersweet ending, but it gave me like such catharsis to see these characters interacting one more time. Like, let Peter have a little bit of joy. I really just wanted the film to end right there, but it didn't. It kept going. And so I don't think they could change it because they have to show us Jean Grey in preparation for Doomsday. But it was just not as satisfying of a movie. And so it felt like we were jumping into a completely different movie when we went into the third act and we had to go save Jean Grey. It felt like a movie that was supposed to be the third movie in the series, or a completely alternate movie that was just a Jean Grey movie that we could have her interact with a superhero in that one who would then come save her. There were a couple other things that I think were pretty minor, but kind of started to stack up over the course of the movie. Like, what is Peter's job? How is he affording this grand apartment in New York and all of the tech that he has? Because he seems to be blowing through things a lot. And that was something that I really appreciated with the original Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, is how we continually saw him trying to balance the job with being Spider-Man, with having relationships. That's just not something that ever comes into play in this movie. And it's a minor thing, but I think it would have really just helped us ground ourselves with the character a little bit. I mean, you could even say, I would have hated this, but you could have even said, like, you know, he still has a scholarship from the Stark Institute that's paying him out or something. Just something to explain why he's able to do everything in the world that he's able to do, because he constantly has that. They put a huge deal into this, like, spider sense. They make a huge deal about how these spider traits are taking over, and he puts this like thing on his neck to kind of inhibit those traits. But then in the third act, he just, by the sheer power of saying I am both a spider and a man, he just overcomes that difficulty, no problem. And there's just no explanation for it. It just is dropped so quickly. And that was very frustrating to watch. And then there was the contractual mask being off in the third act of the movie. Peter had been so careful the entire film about, like, you know, no one can see my face. Punisher can't see my face, like, even when I'm taking a sip of my coffee. But then he just takes the mask off for the entire third act and doesn't care at all. I get that, like, he's okay with Jean Grey seeing his face to help humanize him. But she could let go of the mind control of all of these other people at any given moment, and his face would be exposed. Again, we just had an entire movie about the consequences of him trying to figure out how to have the entire world not know who Spider-Man is anymore. But in this one, for the third act, he just takes the mask off and says, you know what? Screw it. At this point, whoever sees my face, it's totally fine. It doesn't even matter. So that, I thought, was just kind of bothersome a little bit. There were so many characters in this movie. I really think that Hulk shouldn't have been in this movie, Elena shouldn't have been in this movie, and MJ's boyfriend shouldn't have been in this movie. They all just bogged down the plot, and I didn't feel like we got anything that great out of having them in this film. I could understand potentially having Dr. Banner in this movie to help explain some stuff as a cool little cameo, but having the Hulk in it just did not work that well. Some of the VFX were great, and I thought that some of them were some of the best things we've seen in the MCU, and then there were shots that had to have been the rough version, because I don't know how you let something like that get into the final version of this film. And then the last thing that bothered me was that this film felt the need to spoon feed you information. Whenever something happened, a character had to explain it, and I think it would have just done the film a service to let the audience try and figure that out. Let them theorize about it afterwards, which is something that I thought the first 3 phases of the MCU were so good about, is just leaving little Easter eggs in and letting the fans talk about it and figure it out as they continued. in the weeks and in the months after the movie and before the next movie would come out. And that's just not something we get anymore, which I think is a consequence of Netflix and the studios just believing that the audiences cannot retain information, which I do not agree with. I think that audiences are fully capable of it and you just need to trust them. But how does Brand New Day stack up against other Spider-Man movies? Well, I think it is the best of the Tom Holland movies. I think that No Way Home is very close. I do think that No Way Home has better emotional highs and emotional lows than this movie does, but I think this film is way more cohesive and way more rewatchable than No Way Home is, because No Way Home relies a bit too much on nostalgia, and this film, I think, balanced that way better. In terms of all of the Spider-Man movies, live action and the Spider-Verse movies, I would rate it below Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man 1, and the two Spider-Verse movies. So this would go probably about number 6 on my list. So let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. This film continues Marvel's recent upward trend, which is great. While this film had some things that didn't work for me, it's great to see the character get another film with some excellent action and visuals. While I think this film was overhyped, I definitely think that it is worth going to see in theaters, and I would even consider going to watch this again. It was very enjoyable. Maybe just have your expectations tampered a little bit, because I think that some people are tending to overhype it a bit, and I would rather you go in underhyped for the movie and then come out being blown away than going in expecting a 10 out of 10 movie and it not meeting your expectations. I would rate Spider-Man Brand New Day a 7 out of 10. Have you seen Spider-Man Brand New Day? If you have, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. Check out my film, Letting Go of Jack, which is available to watch on Amazon, and follow me for movies and more.